Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Journey Within. I am your host, Andrea Escobar Logreira, spiritual medium psychic. Today, I am joined by the incredibly talented, I feel almost like a soul connection towards her, Stacey Aaronson. And I'm going to go ahead and throw a shout out because I feel like her mother Bree is here with us in spirit. So I just wanted to acknowledge her as well for a moment. But Stacey is a talented publisher. She is an author. She is a all-around just inspiring soul. And today she is joining us. We're going to talk all about things metaphysical. We're going to dive deeper into her journey and talk a little bit about her book, which if you're a Gilmore Girls fan, you're gonna want to read this book. Guys, when I saw this book, I was like, oh, I manifested a real life Gilmore Girls. Yes, literally real life Gilmore Girls going on right now. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so honored to share energy space with you and your mom right now. Oh, this is
Oh
so
my
beautiful.
goodness. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be in your energy space. Thank you for having me. What a lovely introduction.
Thank you. Oh, this is so incredible. So before we go into, all things metaphysical and we dive deeper into that, I'm gonna give away your book a little bit because you had a pretty, I don't want to say unorthodox because there's a lot of moms that start off young, but you shared a very beautiful bond with your mom in this lifetime where you got to be really just best friends.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit about your childhood and kind of a little bit about Bree and your dad, because that does kind of shape up your childhood.
Yeah, sure. Well, my parents met when my mom was 15, my dad was 19, and they dated, and then Vietnam happened, and my dad was going to be sent off to war. And so it was like, well, we better have sex because we may never get another chance. So, so first time out, my mom finds out she's pregnant. My dad actually never did go overseas. He was very fortunate, but he was in the Marines and he was down, we lived in Southern California. So he was down in San Diego and that's where he was stationed. And so basically it was kind of a have news for you letter. They had already broken up, and then it was kind of like my mom was, just turned 16 a month after this, and she was just petrified and didn't know what she was going to do. So she held me in and didn't tell my grandparents for 5 months. She just, I can't even think about what her life was like those 5 months, being so scared. But my dad said, I want to be there. I want to help you raise this child, even if we're not together. And so he was always, absolutely committed to me, which is really special. I mean, a lot of guys would just take off. But as soon as my mom told my grandparents, their thing was, well, you two have to get married. I mean, this was the end of 1968. So it was kind of, far for the course for the time.
Yeah.
So they were forced into getting married, and my mom was way too young. My dad was actually okay with it. But within a year, I was born in February, and within a year they were already divorced. It was just too much for my mom in particular. And so my mom got custody, my dad got, visitation, the typical thing, but it was always, like the way I like to put it is I had this sort of wonderfully beautiful trifecta of flavors in my life. And it was my dad, my mom, and my grandparents. My grandparents were so loving and so supportive and so adored me. And I never ever felt like I wasn't wanted or I was an accident or I had, upset everybody's lives. I just always knew my mom was super young when I was born. And so was my dad. And that it was, it was a surprise for my grandparents and it wasn't always easy. But I had so much love, Andrea. I mean, truly, I never looked at my family and thought, oh, I wish I had, the Brady Bunch family or the June Cleaver family or, whatever. I never looked at those sort of quintessential intact families and thought, I wish that were my family. I adored my family and they adored me. And I think what was so special, besides the fact that my mom, was doing the very best she could as a child raising a child, and there are a lot of funny stories in the book about that. But that my dad stepped up and he was so dedicated to me, and always put so much just love and attention whenever we were together. We did so many fun things and educational things and played games and did sports. And it was great. And then I had my grandparents who were very, stable and traditional. And, so I had these three like really kind of distinct environments I grew up in, because with my mom, it was very free spirited and unstructured and kind of irreverent. And then I had sort of responsible, practical dad over here. And then I had my, kind of traditional comfort food grandparents over there. And it was really lovely. So, I think, one of the greatest gifts besides that, I mean, that right there is huge, is just that all of my immediate family was so invested in me being myself and not pushing me in a direction or not trying to tamp down my personality. I had so much respect and I was always given a voice. And, I think that's, a lot of people don't get that. And so, I mean, my mom would have conversations with me as far back as I could remember, asking for my opinion. What did I think about things? And my dad was the same way, very respectful, open friendship, kind of conversations. And my grandparents were a little more traditional, but even they were the same way. They were just all about letting me be me and just loving me as I was with all my little idiosyncrasies. And so I grew up with these three really wonderful, I don't want to call them entities, but, people around me. And then my dad's mom was a wonderful grandmother too. So I really felt like I lucked out big time. Despite the fact that on the surface, people have often said, oh, how sad, your parents were divorced before you were one. And, oh, that must have been hard for you. And right away, I'm like, no, it wasn't, because I didn't have to go through their messy divorce. I never knew them as an unhappy couple. They just kind of knew that it wasn't going to work, and they made the best decision. And, I really did luck out that I had parents who made things work the way they did and gave me so much love and affection.
That's something that throughout the book, it's very prominent. You had a lot of love and support.
Yeah.
And that is something that not a lot of kids get. And I think I just answered my own question that I wanted to ask you. And that was, you're so authentic, like from I mean, I can see this from the book, but from just like the beginning of the book to the end, you stay true to who you are always. You don't try to dim yourself down or change who you are. And that was a question that I had. I'm like, how, because that's something that's so hard for a lot of people. And I include myself in that. And I think it might be partially that you had that support and that space to kind of flourish into that person, or yeah. I'm like, is that how you say it? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. I think when a child is given so much freedom to be themselves, and I think too, I wasn't a spoiled brat. I wasn't wreaking havoc. I think part of it was just who I came here as. I came here with a personality. I was, always told I was an old soul, that kind of thing. And I just, I wasn't a rebel kid at all. I was actually very much a pleaser. I wanted people to be happy. And so I really had no inclination to, I don't know, like shirk off anybody's rules or not do what was expected of me. At the same time, I had all of this freedom, and so I really I think I just felt like I knew that I was always okay as who I was, and that I wasn't supposed to try to be somebody different. And that was instilled in me so young, and all of my life with my family, that that's just who I became. I never felt like I had to make excuses or be apologetic about some of my, maybe a little more uncommon life paths or choices I've made. It was always just, this is who I am. And if somebody doesn't like it, it's not kind of like, well, too bad for them in a snotty way, but at the same time, I felt like I could stand in my authenticity without having to get permission for it.
Wow. I feel like that's such a strong quality to have, especially for women.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And I think too, as I was growing up, when you're growing up, you don't necessarily know those things right
Yeah.
away. And I remember at some point, I might have been in my 20s or something, my mom and I were chatting, and I said something about maybe like bouncing around between, her and my dad or something like that.
Mm.
And she said, I know, and maybe that wasn't so great for you. And I said, no, it's not that it wasn't. She goes, but what you did have was so much freedom. And when she said it, and she wasn't saying it like, I gave you so much freedom. She was
Yeah.
just saying it matter of factly, because she always wanted me to have that. And I always did. And it kind of clicked like, wow, I did. When I really sat and thought about some of my friends and how they grew up, and I thought, people don't typically have that kind of freedom to be themselves and freedom to speak their mind, and respectfully so, but even still to have a voice as a child and never feel silenced and never feel like, because I said so, no, don't say that, or no, don't do that, or be that. And then it clicked, and I started to really get just how fortunate some of those things I'd been given were. So even though I always loved my family and I never wanted any kind of different family or a different mom or anything, it was a cool moment, to have that realization. And then writing the book, delving into all of these memories and events, it just brought it even more full circle for me. Just all of these wonderful gifts I was given as a human being, and how appreciative I really am for all of them. And that's a really nice place to be, especially when I was writing in a grieving space, but I was also writing in a joyful space. So, but I don't want to jump ahead.
Oh man, no, this is me kind of jumping ahead. That was a question I was wondering. I know that obviously you had to be grieving because it was so short after everything, but it doesn't come across as that. The book comes off so joyful. Do you know what I mean?
I love that you said that, because to be honest, most of writing the book was totally joyful. And then when I got to writing about my mom's final days, that was very emotional, because I had to really piece everything together. Everything kind of blended in my mind. And so I had to go back to text messages and conversations with people and figure out what actually happened when, because it was important for me, I felt, to bring the reader through, if I was going to bring the reader through all of our lives together and all of these mystical events and the being apart and being together and, the ups and downs and things, that it was only right to kind of take them through our final days, because it was only 9 days. It wasn't months or, even weeks, it was days. And so figuring out what those days actually looked like, and what happened when, because as you know, there were some pretty miraculous things that happened, that there was a lot of emotion in that for me, for sure. I got a lot of like a therapeutic time of grieving out, but it hasn't felt sad to me at all. The book itself has felt like something my mom and I did together. It's just she wasn't on the earthly plane doing it with me. And so it felt like this wonderful joint project we did that we would have done maybe when she was still here. But it didn't turn out that way. It turned out that she was going to help me from the beyond. you know? And so I feel so grateful that all the stars aligned and things came together the way they did. And I was able to bring all the joy, because most of our lives really were. There was a lot of joy and laughter and silliness. And I got to put that in the book. So yes, I'm so glad it feels that way, because I know there's also, you know, the sad parts too. So thank you for saying that.
No, thank you. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I can't imagine writing the book so close to everything. But it just shows where you are at, just and just how evolved you are as as a human, and just
Aw.
like I mentioned earlier, you're in such a soulful place, because I feel like you were. I mean, to me, it's almost like you channeled this through Bree.
You know, I will tell you that when I decided I was going to write the book was 6 weeks after she had left. And I had the time. It was sort of like my client load was such that I had the time. I had this sort of open space and that I don't normally have. And I have a really good friend who said she would be my accountability partner, you know, for daily word counts. And she was going to work on a novel. So we were going to do it together. And so that was great. And then it was like every day, everything just flowed, and it flowed in an almost perfectly linear way. And it wasn't that I hadn't thought about many of these memories many times, or talked to my mom and laughed about them many times. So it wasn't like I was really reaching back into my memory to find some things. But some things did surface that I hadn't thought about in a long time. And I felt like, well, there's Bree. Bree's like, don't forget that. Don't forget to put that in. And so, yeah, it felt like she was there, and that sort of her stardust was suffusing the writing, and it was flowing for me. And there were times when I was laughing when I was writing, and that was great. And I felt like she was doing the same. So yeah, it was a very sweet endeavor, and I'm so grateful I was able to do it.
Oh man. This oh gosh, your connection with her is just so beautiful. And I say connection because we were talking about, and this is kind of diving into the next part of what I wanted to talk to you about. But you talk a lot about knowing that you have a soul contract with her, and you've had a lot of mystic experiences, at least just from the book, but I feel like there's a lot more. And this is also, is Dana, she has some clairs, doesn't she?
Somewhat.
Some clair, I think she's like clair, isn't she clairvoyant or claircognizant or clair?
Well, no, but what happened was when my mom was transitioning, one of the days, and I talk about this in the book, Dana felt she was having a conversation with her soul, and that had never happened to Dana before. Dana being my partner, in case
Yeah.
people
Oh
are
yeah,
wondering who that
I was
is.
about to say, I'm like, by the way, everyone, it's not, who we're talking about.
Yeah, she's my soulmate of 21 years. Yeah, so she had this experience very early one morning where she absolutely knew she was having a conversation with my mom in her mind. And it was not something she was making up. She said there was an absolute shift in what she felt in the environment, and that she knew it was Bree talking to her. And she was my mom's other daughter. She's loved her from day one. So that was really special, but that had never happened to her before. So but my mom told her, this is part of your gift, being able to do this. And so she's still sort of not sure where to go with that. But that was a very interesting gift my mom gave to her as she was coming and going from her physical body those last days.
Has she had any more like connections to the other side or anything like that?
No, she really hasn't. But but just knowing that is sort of opened up, you know, a curiosity of what's possible. And then I think she's just been so supportive of me being, you know, throwing myself into like hours and hours a day of writing, and then, you know, all the editing and the rewriting and the, you know, just been book. You know, she's just been so supportive. And so she hasn't really gone off in her own direction in that way, at least not yet. But that was a pretty special thing that came out of one of the special things that came out of that transitioning phase.
I don't know why. I have a feeling that in a few months, years, we have this conversation and it's going to be a whole other tune. No, there's this like strong, I'm getting like buzzing literally
Wow.
from her. So that's why I was like, I kept like, but are you sure there's nothing there? Yeah.
I think it's just maybe the full awareness isn't there yet for her. Not that it's not there.
It's just, it takes, I tell people like, for me, I had a lot of resistance towards my kids.
Did you?
Oh my God, so much. And I had enough experiences that it was kind of like, okay, why are you still doubting it? But it wasn't until 2020 I kept going to, like, I kept going places and I'd talk to someone and then all of a sudden be like, and I'd just be like, what did you say? I'm like, I have no idea. No, you just said all of this and this and this and it's, oh, really? Have no idea. Right. And sometimes I would remember what I channeled, sometimes I wouldn't. And it was just getting to the point where I couldn't avoid it. And it was getting super uncomfortable for me. I was at a dinner party and we were outside and my third eye opens when I consume cannabis. If it's in a ceremonial way, not to just whatever other people do. But I all of a sudden started to connect and see spirits. And I'm like, there's a lot of people here. I didn't even know you guys were here all this time. I've been here for like hours. And everyone started to feel something. There was someone that hadn't crossed over yet. And the daughter wasn't ready for that. And it was just a lot. But it was one of those where I'm like, okay, everyone saw it. I really can't deny this anymore. And it was that, but it I tell people, I'm like, it's not like they were like, hey, look, fly away, little birdie. And I'm like, no, I'm just gonna stay here, I'm scared. And they're like, all right, you're not flying. What do I do? That was my energetic gift. So wow. I do think you have to be ready.
And I've heard so many people who have those kinds of gifts say that they've fought them. And in fact, my dear intuitive friend who I talk about in the book, who has a very big special role to play in our lives, she too, I mean, she had this inkling and this, you know, vision or this feeling and it was like, no, that's not how I was raised kind of thing. And then she got struck by lightning. And she was like, okay, all right already. I guess you're really trying to get the message to me. So, I mean, talk about a wake-up call, right?
Literally. Well, let's hope. I'm going to like, hold on, knock on wood. That's
no, that's not going to
happen today now. No, I was like, I hope that doesn't happen today now.
No. And it happened actually to another shaman I know. She was struck by lightning too. It was like, okay, already, all right.
I'm curious as to what their signs are now. I'm like,
wow. One is a Pisces and the other is a Gemini.
Interesting.
Now, wait, when is your birthday?
I'm a Gemini.
I know.
So here, I'll tell you, June 7th, 1990. I'm a Gemini.
Okay.
Sagittarius rising, Sagittarius moon.
Okay. Now, I don't know how to interpret that the way you do, but I thought you were going to tell me your birthday was the same as my mom's because she's also a Gemini.
Wait, that would have been insane.
Yeah, I would have flipped out. You might have had to pause the recording.
I probably would have been like, well, that's what, okay, so it's funny because I knew she was a Gemini. I'm like, I knew there was a reason why I'm so connected to you.
Yep.
Part of me, it was hilarious. There is, and I'm not going to give it too much away, but there's this one scene in the book. And I feel like it's like the typical like 70s like night, just having fun. And I so wanted to just go back and be like, can I please go back in time and be in that room and just like see this in person?
I think I know what you're
You
talking
know what
about.
I'm talking about? Just so vividly. I'm just like, I just want to go back in time and be there with her right now. This would be amazing. No, I don't know why. Your mom spoke to me. She's still speaking to me, even though she's not on this plane anymore. Oof.
She was a hoot.
But the thing is, it makes sense. You're an Aquarius, so it's like air and air. It goes perfectly. Wait, what's no?
She's a Virgo.
Yes. No, that makes so much sense because her ruling planet is Mercury. Your mom's ruling planet is Mercury.
Okay. See, you know this stuff. I'm so fascinated by it. I always have been, but I just don't have as much knowledge as you do. So
yeah,
I love
so
it.
Into it. Have you dove into human design at all?
I haven't.
Oh
I know about it, but I know.
We need to. I'm like, Stacey, we have so many rabbit holes to go down.
I know. I know.
So kind of reeling it back though, because I know I'm like throwing all this stuff at you.
I know your listeners going, what?
What? I'm like, yeah. No, I laugh because I feel like at some point you just get to know my very crazy brain that it's just not linear at all. My mom tells me that when I was little, I would try to make sense to people and they'd be like, trying to understand her is like this. And I'm like, yeah, doesn't that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
And I was like, no. And I'm like, that's a you problem, not a me problem.
Right.
Yeah. But no, I think my listeners can keep up with my very manic ways.
Okay, good.
You have a lot of kind of, there's just, the way that I view things is we have the puzzle, going back to sacred contracts. We meet with our guides beforehand. It's like, all right, this is what I want to do in this lifetime. All right, here's the big puzzle piece. I got to erase this all before you go back. Go, you're going. And then they give us small pieces as time goes. A lot of the time though, you judge, not you judge, you doubt whether you're actually gonna get to not even the entire puzzle, but if even these pieces are going to come together, because you're just like, what is all of this? You, for some reason, though, I feel like you never questioned each piece as you were giving it.
Oh, that's a really interesting observation. Oh. Well, like I said, I did always feel like my family made perfect sense. Like it was supposed to be the way it was. I was never looking for it to be different.
Yeah.
I did see the serendipity in it, in the way that it was, even though people from the outside a lot of times on first judgment thought it wasn't so great maybe, but I'd always be like, yes it is, yes it is, this is why. But when it came to the dark night of the soul, which I know is a big theme of your podcast, I will say that was when the pieces were not showing up for me. I was in the darkest, bleakest, most defeated place I had ever been because I did not understand what was happening and why I was kind of, I guess, being guided or pushed, or the door was being shut on me. I tried to see the positive side of things, but during that time I really, really struggled. And so I will say, when talking about Dark Night of the Soul, that was a time when the puzzle pieces were they just didn't seem to be there for me. It took a very long time. As you know, it took about a year. It was a dark year of the soul for me. Yeah.
Would you even say that now that you see it, from where you're kind of looking back and you can see it for the dark night of the soul experience, do you see things as kind of like clues to, oh yeah, I could see I was totally out of alignment, no, that needed to happen? Can you see the dark night now for the purpose that it had?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And it's, to me, it's magical and a total gift. And to be honest, Andrea, there was a point where I was so deflated and so feeling like a failure. And I'd really never felt like a failure before. And I don't even like to use that word because I don't think anybody really fails at anything. They just figure out how not to do it. And we call it failure, but it's really not. It's just, oh, that's the wrong direction, or that doesn't, the light bulb doesn't work. It doesn't light up when I do it that way. As Edison, had 10,000 tries on that light bulb. So, I think that, yes, looking back, I can see how all the pieces fit together. But there was a point where I was so down and I said, okay, this must be happening because I'm going to have an amazing story of resilience to tell Oprah. This was my way of coping. I said, okay, imagine you're sitting across from Oprah and you've got this incredible story of reinvention or resilience. That's what's going to make your story cool. Not, oh, my life just happened and happened and I skipped through the flowers and then I became this person. No, everybody who's interesting has some amazing story of going through the doldrums. And so I thought, okay, this must be that time. I still didn't know how it was going to look when I came out. I didn't know how long it was going to last. And I was terrified. But I started pretending that I was telling that story. And I just picked Oprah because at the time, Super Soul Sunday or whatever, I picked her at the time because it just worked for me to pretend like she was saying, how in the world did you make it through that time? And I had a story to tell her about how I never gave up and how I kept believing, that something great was going to come out of this really dark time. And so I would keep telling myself this story, even though none of the puzzle pieces in that story were actually there. I was just making it up to make myself feel better and to try to get myself through it. And then once things started to happen, and it was quite miraculous, and people taking leaps of faith with me. And I don't know if you want to get into that at all, but I do talk about it in the book. But once that started happening, and I was able to look at my whole situation backwards instead of go, okay, I met this person, and then this person introduced me to this person, and then this happened, and then this happened, and that was very cool. And so now the puzzle pieces are, all fitted together and it's a great picture. But there was a long time when I didn't have that. So it was really about making up a story that would help me get through it by trying to convince myself I was going to have an amazing story to tell. And now I'm sitting across from you, and quite honestly, I'd rather be talking to you than Oprah right now, so it's fine. I mean, it means so much to me to talk to somebody who gets it, and just who appreciates it and understands these kinds of things, that, this moment is part of what I dreamed of, is being able to have a conversation with someone like you about how things worked out eventually, even when I couldn't see it at the time.
You take fake it till you make it to a new level. No, I think it's so beautiful though, because it's almost tapping into that, getting out of that ultra logical heady space and tapping into that soul, heart, imagination space, so that you can almost believe that story. Because if you spend time in the analytical, well, then how is this going to happen? You don't allow this story to actually build and then manifest. So
you're so right. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't aware of the law of attraction. I wasn't aware of certain things that I am now. And then that got introduced to me. And that was just a whole other perspective to take. Like, what if I stop trying to be in my reality space and say, we can't afford this. That's just the way it is. I'm being responsible. I'm being practical. I got these things from my dad. And that's how I'm supposed to accept my situation. I thought I was doing the right thing every time I said that. Well, we just can't afford this right now. And we can't do this right now. And there were all these can'ts and roadblocks. And then I was introduced to the law of attraction perspective, which I know has its imperfections. Some people don't really know how to use it. Some people use it to frustration. But at the time, just having the perspective of what if I just changed the wording and said, I can walk into a store and say, I can afford anything in this store. I just might choose not to buy anything. So then I started doing things like that. And it made me feel less burdened to start thinking that way. And, as we know, thoughts become things. I didn't know that then, but I know that now. And so it's like the more we can put ourselves in that space of what we want and what, the opposite of what feels like the dark reality, the quicker we're going to manifest it. And so I think that had a lot to do with helping me at least stay buoyed through the tough time. And certainly my mom had a lot to do with it too, because she was a huge support and help, as you know, from the story I tell in the book about that. But I also think that when you can look at the different elements of your life coming together to bring you into that alignment that maybe hasn't been there for a long time. And when I say alignment, I'm talking for me about career alignment mostly, being aligned with my true gifts and doing something that I really love. And it's not that I hated my career before. I didn't. It had its place and I learned a lot. But there was a point where the universe was saying, you have stayed out of alignment with these gifts I gave you for too long. This is why you're having this dark night of the soul, because until you align with those gifts, and I'm going to help you, I really am going to help you. But, until that happens, you're not going to go off in the wrong direction again. I mean, that's how it felt. When I looked back on it, I thought, oh boy, the universe really worked overtime for me to keep me from going back into the old path, the familiar, comfortable path. I was like, no, you have another path over here, but I'm going to have to close a bunch of doors on you over here so that you'll go there. And that's what happened. So, yeah, I'm just like in a swirly, glittery world of doing work I love all the time. But it took a while for me to come to that space.
It's interesting because you almost faced your own resistance in your own way to step
You're so right.
into this next phase and transition into your own gifts.
You're so right about that. And I think part of it was just not even knowing what the picture could look like, because I didn't. I mean, this is a career, I'm a writer, I'm a ghostwriter, I'm an editor, I'm a cover designer, an interior layout artist for books. I mean, books are my whole world. And I'm a publishing partner. So I didn't know that existed for individuals. I thought that existed in publishing houses, and it existed, for people who were, I don't know, they had a degree in something I didn't know about, or who knows. So I didn't even know that this path was a possibility. And frankly, it wasn't so much a possibility until publishing really changed around 2011, which is when I came into this career. And self-publishing started becoming a more viable path. And so it wouldn't have been there for me even a year to 5 years before, 20 years before. It wasn't there. And it wasn't something that or that I knew about that existed, or that they talked about in high school as a career path, or that colleges offer as a major. I mean, it doesn't exist in those arenas. And so I didn't even know what I could shoot for until one piece at a time fell into place with these amazing, wonderful angels who took leaps of faith with me. They could have taken leaps of faith with anyone else but me. But they took leaps of faith with me and showed me what I could do and where I could use my gifts. And so I think, for some of us, especially now, a lot of people are reinventing themselves. A lot of people have had their lives implode and their jobs go away, and they're having to reinvent themselves and rethink what they can do, what they've always wanted to do. Maybe they no longer have a job that they actually hated and wish they could stop working at. That doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it feels serendipitous in the moment. And believe me, I know, because it didn't feel that way when it happened to me. But what's interesting is there are always doors for us to walk through. We don't always know exactly where they are, but if we can get sort of tuned in and we can start thinking about, well, what do I really love to do? What did I love to do as a child? Start kind of playing with that. And then, what gifts have I always had that I never used as a career? That was my situation. So you can start opening some doors or finding possibilities, and then, wow, you never know what you might step into. That's a whole new world where you feel that alignment, and there's nothing that compares.
No, it's so beautiful the way that you express that, because I feel like that's kind of why I started this. There's so many people kind of, okay, 2020, I lost my job. What should I do now? And when we look at people, we don't see everything that happened on the back end. And until you sit down and you're like, hey, so was it really as serendipitous as it looks? And it's like, no, now looking back, it was like that. But when I was going through it, trust me, it wasn't. Yeah, there were some days that I had some awareness, but a lot of the time you're just trudging through kind of mud and trusting that eventually the mud's going to stop and you're going to, end up wherever you want to end up. But I feel like that's a lot of what people need right now. It's to see, to believe that what they want is out there. And when you hear other people, you're able to connect to their stories and be like, oh, if they were able to do it, then I can do it too.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I feel so grateful for people like you who sit down with people and find out what those stories are, and that you're allowing me the space to share mine, because it is so inspiring when you know you're not alone, and when you know that somebody can think that, oh my gosh, I feel like the biggest failure and I've never felt that way in my life. And then, sometime later, it might take a while. Now this person's saying, oh my gosh, I've never felt so aligned. I love what I do, and it's not even like work. And, and there are a lot of people who think, I don't know how I could ever say that. I don't even know what that would look like. And I'm here to say, I didn't know what that could look like either. And it happened for me. So it can happen for everybody. I truly believe that the universe wants us to use our gifts. That's what we came here to do. And so many of us are suppressed because our parents don't like our particular gifts, or people tell us that we can't make a living doing that, or we'll be poor if we do that, or it's too hard, or it's too outside the box, or, all these limitations people put on us, and none of them are real. Not one of them is real. The only limitations exist in our own minds. And so it's like, once we can get rid of those shackles of any kind of conditioning. Now, I was very fortunate. I really didn't have conditioning or dogma or any of that. I mean, amazingly so. And even still, I didn't come into, my dream career until I was in my early 40s. So, you just never know how timing is going to work for somebody. But I think if we can just realize that we all have talents and gifts that we came here with, and the reason we feel in maybe a job we're doing is because we're not aligned with those gifts. We're not using them. And so it's kind of like, you don't want them to go wasted. When you've come here, you have this opportunity. It's like you want to use them. And yet so many people don't have that chance, or they don't take that chance, or they don't explore it because they're afraid. And so they end up feeling out of alignment for such a long time, because that's the universe saying you're out of alignment because you're not using your gifts the way I was hoping you would, or I, wanted you to. So not in a critical way, but more in a, oh, I want that for you kind of way. That's the way I view the universe, as just always being like a cheerleader on our side. And now, of course, I have my mom on across the veil, being that cheerleader too. So, I think we all have our angels and our guides and just the divine rooting for us. And I think if we can harness that and go with that, there's nothing that can stop us from being remarkable.
You said a couple of things there that I kind of want to elaborate more on. One is, I think a lot of people, especially when you're entering the space of manifestation and law of attraction and calling in things, you talk about limiting beliefs and conditioning. And I hear this all the time with clients. Well, I didn't have a lot of conditioning. And I'm like, and you just said it yourself. You're like, I didn't have a lot. And I still didn't step into my purpose until I was in my 40s. And I wanted to touch on that because I feel like a lot of the times we want to put it, it's like, well, so-and-so had this and that's why, they haven't gotten there yet. But what's wrong with me? And I feel like this is something that we're both going to agree with. There's a lot of lessons that need to be learned. There's a lot of, I don't even want to call them. It's like you need to pick up the tools that you need in order to survive when you get there, and not even survive, in order to thrive when you get there. And if you don't have those tools, then when you get there, you're not going to be able to make the best of your situation because you're like, okay, what do I do now? Everything happened for a reason. And it played a role to get you to where you are now. Is there anything that you kind of look back and you're like, and it took a long time for me to swallow this as a gift?
Oh, I can tell you that I spent 20 years in retail, and 12 of those years were in, kind of high profile leadership roles. And I loved those jobs and I loved my companies. But there was a point where I felt wasted, like not wasted as in,
no, I know.
like my gifts were being wasted.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out, why did I have all these years in retail? Now, there's nothing wrong with working in retail. Yeah. I worked for Nordstrom. I loved the company. And then I ran a little boutique retail company and I loved it. But I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, what was that? Why so many years? Why? Was it just because it was familiar? And I'm like, well, no, there's got to be something more to it. You know what, Andrea? What I figured out that was really cool?
Okay.
When I started working one-on-one with clients, with authors, I realized that all of those years, particularly being in management, because I had so many different kinds of employees. I had older women, older men. I had straight and gay and single and married. And I had it all. Students. And I had to learn how to relate and encourage and guide all of these different kinds of people. I had employees who didn't want to get promoted. They just wanted to make enough money to buy extra stuff for their grandkids. I had employees who wanted to get promoted. I had employees who wanted to learn from me, but to a degree, it was like all different. And so in learning how to deal and relate to so many kinds of people with all different personalities and different ages and different situations, I brought that into my business, where I work with all kinds of different authors one-on-one. And I can tell you, when you work with someone to bring a book to life, it's very intimate. It doesn't matter if it's a memoir, that is an automatically intimate sounding book, but it could be somebody's baby. It could be somebody's, self-help or business book or, whatever. It's important to them. And they have, in some cases been working on it for years and dreaming about it for years. And then we end up being a good match for each other. And I take that very seriously. I take it very much to heart that someone's trusting me with their baby. And I want it to be a wonderful experience. And I want them to feel well taken care of, and that they know in the end they're going to have this beautiful book. And, being able to do that for people, and in part that's my nature. And so it's easy for me. I'm kind of just a nurturer by nature, but at the same time, I realized that all of those years in those positions gave me so much to be able to run my own business and work with lots of different people, sometimes at the same time, and, different stages of their books. And so for a long time, I did wonder, did I waste years of my life doing this? And then I came to the place of, I don't think we can look at anything ever as a waste. There's something there. And maybe I could have gone to New York and worked for a publisher in my 20s. Would I have been as happy as I am now? Probably not. So it's timing too. Like I said, this job did not really exist for an individual years ago. It came into existence right in the time, for the most part, in a big way, right in the time I was stepping into where I was reinventing myself. So how could I not look at that and see the serendipity, see the magic of that, and then look back and go, oh, well, I wasted these 20 years though in retail. How could I say that when I can look at the timing as being so perfect for what I'm doing now? So I think being able to look backwards and really think about, I love when you use the analogy of the puzzle pieces, because that is so really how it is. How we bring these puzzle pieces together and go, oh, now I get the picture. Now I see it. So it's really not helpful to beat ourselves up ever about something we didn't do sooner or didn't do another way, because I think even if we could have been happier if we'd pivoted at a certain point, maybe not even happier, but happy. Maybe we could have been satisfied or happy if we'd pivoted 10 years ago and done something else. I think that everything that we're doing while we're doing it has validity. And sometimes we just need to look a little hard at it, like I did. It took me a while. I kept looking at it and looking at it, and then finally see why there was some divinity in that path.
I love that. It's so magical the way that just everything unfolds, but it is when we're ready. And I think timing is something that we as humans, we hold a lot of attachment to on this earthly plane. But once you can let go of that, you realize that everything does unfold in divine timing, not human timing, but genuinely divine timing. And you had a lot of experiences like that in your life. Just you were at the right place at the right time. And I mean, even you and Dana meeting, it happened.
That's another book. that is a whole other book.
Right? So it's just like there's a lot of just moments of that, but it's following that course, because we sometimes get these, and like, this is something that I always tell people, if you're driving somewhere and you miss an exit, instead of saying, oh, miss the exit, I'm going to be late. It's like, the reality is you were supposed to miss that exit. And there's a reason that now you have to drive around. Maybe it's to, hey, slow down, take a deep breath, or you needed to see a flower. I don't know. But when we can almost allow these moments to be what they are, which is invitations to get curious. More things, more of these little synchronicities start to come together.
You're so right. I love that you're saying this, because I think one of our biggest oppositions is just our resistance and our sense that things aren't going our way or aren't. I mean, you can look at so many seemingly little things, just like missing an exit, and go, well, okay, I mean, I can just go with the flow and feel a lot better, or I can get mad and think about how this is, now I'm going to be late, or now I have to turn around, now I have to use more gas in my car, whatever. And what good does that do? None. It doesn't do us any good at all, except rile us up, bring down our frequency. So, getting to the point where you can go more with the flow, and say, well, okay, this isn't really such a tragedy. I mean, sometimes things happen that are much, much bigger, obviously, than missing an exit. And a person could have a lot of regret and always be thinking, oh, if only I'd done this differently. But can I share like a little story that I just heard recently that I think your listeners would appreciate?
Yeah.
This isn't actually about me, but I was listening to a podcast, and it was about a man who had a near-death experience. And he had been driving with his wife, and he somehow like drifted off just long enough to like hit the meridian, and the car flipped and flipped and flipped and flipped, and his wife died. And I know I have chills just saying it. And he saw her. He like came out of his body, and he saw himself like immobile, and he was stuck, and his legs were crushed, and it was a terrible situation. But then he saw himself in the hospital, and he was watching his body, and his wife was there, and she was saying, it's okay, and he was, but you, I like let this happen to you. Like, how could I have let this happen to you? So like, even on a soul level, he was grieving, and he was regretting, and he was like tormented. And she said, it's okay. It was like, the story came out through this near-death experience that they had a soul contract. They had been together many times. And in this particular lifetime, he said, I need to learn a really big lesson of forgiveness for myself, because in his previous lives, he couldn't get it right. And so with his guides, they decided he was going to come to Earth. And at some point, he was going to have a huge tragic thing happen where he would have to forgive himself. And that was part of his soul's journey. And his wife, in her soul state, said, I volunteer to be the one to help you learn that lesson. I know. And so they had it figured out. She was already on board with it. And it was okay. And he was able to have her tell him that, so that when he came back, he remembered everything. He could actually be in a space of, oh my gosh, I miss my wife and I wish this hadn't happened. But he had a whole different perspective of how it was planned, and how she said, I'm in, sign me up for that. In that lifetime, I'm good to go to help you with that. And it really made a huge impact on me. And you've probably heard things like that, being who you are, and having the intuition and everything that you do. But I thought your listeners might want to hear that, because I think for a lot of people, it's very healing to imagine that something that happens that feels very tragic was planned out ahead of time on a soul level. On a human level, it feels unthinkable. And on a soul level, it makes perfect sense. And it's really fleeting, because our time here is so short, really. And that's how I've looked at, losing, I say in quotation marks, my mom on this physical plane. I have taken the perspective of, she and I knew, we were going to be together. We were going to have another lifetime together. And I was going to swoop down the first chance I had to be her child. Oh, good. You had sex once. I'm coming. So that I could, look out for her. And it was going to last, fewer years than I expected, in my human mind. But it was planned that way for a reason, and I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to embrace it, even if I don't fully understand all of the reasons or how it's going to play out. I'm going to embrace it. And it has made such a huge difference. And I know that we totally segued out of Dark Night of the Soul into this.
No.
But so I didn't mean to do that, but it just came to me so strongly to share that story. And I hope people find it helpful or healing.
No, I feel like that's so, it aligns perfectly because that really ties in a lot of your book,
Mhm.
and it shares a lot of where you are at. um I can't imagine losing my mom, and I say this on a human level, I can't. And then I
Yeah.
can't imagine having to 2 months after reminisce our entire life together and not taint it with my current emotions. And you did such a magical and beautiful way of literally bringing us to your childhood and not tainting it with what you were currently feeling, because you could have. Like, I
Oh,
genuinely felt like you invited us into a journey of you and your time with Brie, and that's such a magical experience that I feel like the readers get to be a part of.
well, I can't thank you enough for saying that. That really touches my heart. Thank you so much for saying that. Like I said, the stars aligned. My mom's stardust surrounded me. So I don't know how much credit I can really take for that writing, because it was definitely maybe a group effort. Maybe there were guides, angels, my grandparents. I mean, I don't discount anything.
Oh, I
So
know. I definitely feel like there's a lot of magic in there.
yeah.
So I want to touch on a little bit about your book, but I don't want to give the book away. And we've talked a lot about the book. Do you want to share some stories that are not in the book that kind of touch on the essence of the relationship that you and your mom had? Because one thing that and this was something I was telling my mom and I, while we are really close, she is very much my mom and I am her daughter, and then we are friends. My brother and her are very much best friends, and then mom and son. And I feel
Oh.
like reading your book, I was like, oh, there you go. Best friends. And it was a thing. You were best friends, but I also feel like you were the adult in the relationship, and not in a and I need to disclose this because I talk a lot about in a lot of these episodes, inner child and reparenting. And I don't mean, and I could be very off with this, so I'm gonna let Stacey take this off afterwards, but I don't mean in the way that you had to be the parent and your parents were the child and you weren't allowed to be a child, because that's not at least the message that I got from the book. But it was more of just, you liked being like, Brie, I told you so, you need to do this. Like, you liked having that more of, because you are an old soul. And I feel like your mom, it was just like this little, like, fairy that just wanted to play, and you're like, wait, you need to tone it down, like, come back, no, this is your parameter, you cannot go further than this, in a very beautiful, playful way. It was like she was teaching you to reconnect with your playfulness, and you were teaching her. I don't know, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but the reason I wanted to kind of disclose that was it didn't come off of in a very, you had no parental units and you were calling, I needed to say that because that was not the case in my in my household, and I've talked about that a lot, so I didn't want people to get the wrong idea. But yeah, you had a very beautiful relationship with her, and I would love to hear a little bit more without sharing the entire book.
Well, I appreciate that, but I also really appreciate that you got exactly what you just explained. Because if I say we had a role reversal relationship, automatically that conjures up ideas of I'm waking my mom up from her drunken stupor to take me to school, and I'm getting a job at 12 to put food on the table because my mom is a screw up or a
Mhm.
druggie. It was never like that. Never like that. I will tell you what I truly believe. And I know you have the essence of this because of even how I talk about how I came into the world and how I chose my mother. I really believe that we were mother and daughter before, but reversed. And I believe that my being the mother was part of my natural inclination. It felt very natural. I never felt burdened. I never felt like, I can't believe, I have this young mother and she needs guidance, or I need to help her, or there was never a burden. And I think that is part of what made our bond and just kind of our dynamic so unique, because in another situation, absolutely, and in many other situations, kids are having to reparent themselves. They are missing out on the childhood. But let me tell you something I didn't say directly in the book. And I wanted to, but somehow it didn't come out. And now you're giving me the chance. So this is really sweet. My mom was born in 1952. She was a mid-century kid. My grandparents were traditional. And so she had like a decently structured childhood. And for whatever reason, my mom's instinct, though she says I was 16 and more like a 12-year-old in my mind. I mean, I really had no idea what I was going to do with a baby. But instinctively, she wanted me to have what she would have wanted to have. And that's not to say that she didn't have a decent childhood. I mean, she and my grandma had a testy relationship. But what she did was, with her instinct, she gave me this complete freedom, as we talked about. And she just didn't ever want to make me do anything I didn't want to do. And again, that conjures up, oh, you must have been a spoiled brat. Oh, you must have never followed any rules. You must have been like just a wild child. Well, that wasn't my personality. So I guess my mom was safe. I could have very well turned out to be a little wild child. But in contrast, it was more like I was, sort of the square conservative one, and she was the flower child, wild one, and not even really so wild, but just more the free spirit. And so I anchored her. And like you said, she gave me this ability to play and be free, because I put a lot of pressure on myself. I was very much a perfectionist. I popped out that way. I honestly believe that's just who I was, because my family never, ever put that pressure on me, ever. Not about grades, not about anything. I was the one, oh, I have to get A's in this, and I have to get a perfect score in this. And they're like, oh my God, give yourself a break, So I had a very supportive and loving and easygoing family. And I was the one putting all the pressure on myself. And so what did my mom do? Instead of feeding into that and making it harder, she was like, let's play, let's dance, let's listen to music. If you don't like that food, you don't have to eat it. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. And again, it could have turned out that I just didn't have much respect for society, or I didn't have any structure in my life. But somehow our balance just worked. There was just magic in it. And so sometimes, yeah, I was definitely more the mom, and she respected that. And then she was the mom, although not like a traditional mom at all. As you know, she didn't really stand on the mother card very much. But there were certain things that, she might have wanted me to do, or didn't want me to do, or something. And so she had her humorous ways of dealing with me. But I think that the way she followed that instinct was a miracle in itself, because she was such a young girl. 16 is young no matter how you slice it, but she was a young 16. And then to have had her particular upbringing, and then to decide, this isn't how I'm going to do it. And I don't even know if it was really so much of a decision as it was just what she felt aligned with. And so my mom, who had kind of a rough time of it growing up at times, like I said, a tough relationship with my grandma. She was bullied. She was friendly and popular, but then at a certain time she was bullied. And so, I mean, that was a rough thing to bring into then being a young mother. And somehow my presence opened her up because she got to be the mom of this kind of precocious little weird kid, and that was really fun for her. And also we had this sort of buddy thing going on. So she had, you know, my mom was adopted, so she had her first biological connection with me, and so there was a lot of magic there. And I think we both just appreciated it, and it just grew over the years. It grew into this witty banter and this goofy, you know, dynamic that we shared that was always fun. But I never felt like, are you okay? Did I lose you? I should maybe give it back to you.
Oh, man. Sorry. I randomly connected in with Stacey's mom for a minute. So we paused it and now we're back. Okay, just because she keeps laughing in my ear, do you have a funny story you want to share right now?
I know I'm trying not to give something away from
That's why I was
the
like,
book.
I'm like, is there anything you want to share that's out of the book? Like,
oh my goodness. I'm coming up short, which is I'm being a terrible guest right now.
oh no, that's totally okay. I totally put you on the spot. Here, let's.
I keep gravitating toward things I wrote about in the book, which I guess is just because they're in the forefront.
They're in the forefront of your mind. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what I have? This is a serendipity that I noticed that ties in with the book, but we're not going to talk about the book too much.
Okay.
You got into the healthy lifestyle movement.
Yeah.
If that wouldn't have happened, you wouldn't have been open to presenting all these different ideas to your mom, not to get too in. And I just,
yeah,
that just shows you how you're literally giving the breadcrumbs that you're needed, even though you're not seeing the whole picture. Or just you came into religion.
Yeah.
That was totally different. Like, you didn't grow up and you know, having anything shoved down your throat, which at that time could have been very much a thing. And you were not even like stepping into your waters. You're like, let me just kind of see what's out there and grab something that resonates. And that just, again, that shows just how authentic you are and how you're able to stay true to yourself. Was there a lot of resistance when you kind of went into that journey, or was it more of just like,
Well, it did feel like it just resonated with me, and just, I know we're trying to be
yeah, so I'm like, we're being super elusive and secretive right now.
I don't want to
what
do
are you
that.
talking about? All right,
what are you talking about?
I'm tell this right now, guys.
Okay.
This is not a plug. I'm not getting paid for this. But you need to read this book because I wish that having this conversation with Stacey, and even though we're giving away parts of the book, are going to replace the book, but you really need to read the book. It takes you to a different time. You kind of forget that you're in 2021, and the reason I say this is because you talk so vividly about your childhood, and it's so different to what we're experiencing right now. And I think that's perfect. We need a little bit of hope. And I say that because you touched on this earlier. You know, your parents had you very young, and it could have gone about it a million and thousand ways. And I say that because there's a lot of people that are living one of those million and thousand ways. So it's not that too out there.
Yeah.
But you chose you chose them for this lifetime for whatever purpose that, they played in it. And you really brought us into both parts of your childhood, of experiencing time with your dad, with your mom, with your grandparents. And it wasn't always like, okay, let me just paint a beautiful picture, or this is why everything went bad in my life, let me put this blame on my parents, because it can turn into that. Instead, it was just a very beautiful, it's almost like this is my way of holding on to my childhood, like almost like a diary. Yeah, it's the best way that I can say it. And with that, I'm going to respect the book and not talk more about it, because I feel like people need to go and read it, and instead dive more into your journey. And that is Dark Night of the Soul, where you're at right now with all of this, and the tools that you picked up that you picked up, and now you can look back. And the reason I'm saying that is, what could you tell yourself when you were 20 and 30 that would have helped you out? Not everything again happened in the divine time that it needed to, but maybe you would have been more aware of some of the opportunities that you weren't, because you were so fixated on, why isn't this happening? And I say that because sometimes and I don't like to future predict, which is contradictory as a psychic. The reason I say that is, if I tell you this is going to happen, you get so fixated on this that you miss the opportunities that were supposed to take you there, and then something else totally happens. So it's not about shifting the course of how your life went, but more of, what advice could you have given yourself that would have supported you and made you a little bit more trusting in that darkness? Because I feel like we can all use a little flashlight here and there to light up the journey.
Well, first, I want to thank you so much for the lovely plug for the book. I mean, I don't even want to call it a plug. It was just so sweet and generous of you to speak of it that way. And I really appreciate that you took from it what I intended, because when you write, you know how you feel, and you know what your stories mean to you. And you're not always sure if they're going to come across the way you hope. And that was a huge thing for me, was I really want people to see, it's not a perfect picture. I mean, I talk about, I had all this freedom and this love and this acceptance, and that's all true. But that doesn't mean that there weren't heartbreaks and being, separated and reunited, and, and having a stepmom who, we weren't that close. And I mean, but as things go in terms of how people's lives are and blessings go, I definitely had a lot. But here is what I would say, Andrea, to your question. I have learned that if we look at our lives as, what is my soul trying to learn here? It changes everything. Now, I did not know that. I didn't have that awareness in my 20s. Yes, I believed in past lives. Yes, I felt like my mom and I were this magical, I chose her and all that. But at the same time, I wasn't at the level of understanding I am now. And so what I would say is, instead of, why is this happening to me? The way we tend to ask, why is God doing this to me? Why is the universe doing this to me? But that's really not how things work. It's how we've been conditioned to look at how things work. But in reality, we are on a soul's journey in a human body. And so let's say we came here with the intention, like this man who was in the car accident. He had the intention of learning self-forgiveness. And he lived, I think he was 40-ish when this happened. So he lived all those years before he came into what that was going to mean for him. And so we just don't always know what that is going to look like. But what if, and I love thinking about things this way now, because this has come into my awareness even more strongly since my mom transitioned, is what is my soul wanting to learn? Why would my soul choose this journey for its growth? And so for me, for example, when I was in that dark night, which was really a dark year, I needed to understand that doors close sometimes because there's a better path over here. I think what I want and what I'm good at and what I'm qualified for is through this door. So for one example, I had 2 jobs I really wanted, and I got 2 interviews, second interview for both, and I didn't get either one. And that was sort of my last ditch crush, crushing blow was, oh my gosh, I finally, got to this place. And then boom, again, this didn't happen for me. But as I said, looking back now, clearly it's because that wasn't the right door for me, and I even can look at it as the universe going, I'm so sorry to close this door on you. I know that you're really bummed right now. And so when I view the universe from a compassionate viewpoint, it also changes things. Because I think a lot of us, especially if we've been raised with authoritarian parenting, which I was not, I was raised with the opposite. But when people are, they tend to think, I did this, I'm bad, therefore this bad thing happened to me. Mm-hmm. And so people are very conditioned to live their lives that way. And so when big things happen in life and we go to that, God is like a father figure in the sky type of thing, did this bad thing to me. He's mad at me and I'm being punished. And I don't see the universe working like that at all. I never did, to be honest. But what I can say is that no matter where you might be, and you might be a person, not you, but anyone listening, may be a person who has just lost a job, or now your kids are home, you need to homeschool and you're not sure how to navigate that, or there can be some amazing blessings happening for you that you can't see. And it can be super helpful to say, why would my soul have chosen this path for its growth? Because every time we come here, we're growing. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we miss the boat and we don't get the lessons. And so we come back and we try again to learn some of the same lessons, right? Because we don't always get it. But what if we could fulfill whatever that intention was on a soul level when we chose to come here with the family we chose and the time that we chose to be here? What if we could think about it that way? Why would my soul choose to grow through this particular situation? What would that look like? And then start thinking about it that way. Just shift it. Just do that shift and see what comes up for you. That would be the best advice I think I could give, having been through what I've been through and having come into the awareness that I have.
You need to write a book just like on all this advice, Stacey.
You're too generous.
No, I think it could be like part 2.
Well, I have wondered what could happen with Brie and me that could end up being a part 2. I don't close the door on any possibility.
Ooh.
So
maybe in a few years we might be talking again about this book. It's like Pete's insight across the veil. Ooh,
yes.
Ooh. Oh, that's so magical. No, I love that. And that's I think that question really does shift everything. If you can really sit with it and not kind of brush it off, because I feel like our ego is going to kind of be like, oh, that's, and it's really sitting with it. It's, what does my soul want to learn from this situation, this interaction, this anything? Even if you get sick, what would my soul need to learn from this? Yeah. do you have any current projects on the horizon that you want to share with us? Or I know, I mean, we're celebrating this baby that you just birthed. So are you just going to kind of take pause and celebrate that?
Definitely. The book is being birthed on my mom's birthday, June 14th. And I have to tell you something cool because I'm very much a numbers person.
Well,
Always have been.
double.
There's that. But I don't know if you realize, but every two people can look at their birth years. And so for example, you were born in
1990.
1990. Okay. I was born in 69. When you're 69, my birth year, I'm going to be 90, your birth year. And this happens with everybody. Unless you're in different centuries, then it's a little, I mean, you have to really get old to match. So like my sister was born in 1983 and her first child was born in 2012, I believe. So, that when you've got that 100 years in between, like,
that's a little bit hard.
He'll have to be like 112 when he's 83. But this is the year that my mom and it was our swap year. I turned 52, her birth year, and she would have turned 69, my birth year. So the book is being birthed on her birthday, which would have been her 69th. And I will tell you that my mom sends me 52s and 1952s all the time to let me know that she's around, that something I need, I don't know, I need to feel better about, or that I want clarification on. It's amazing. I get them a lot. And so that's pretty special. So I just wanted to throw that out there because that's just one way that our loved ones communicate with us. And so I don't know, maybe there will be a book called 52. I don't know. But in terms of projects, I feel like right now I have, publicity things happening and I'm writing a lot of articles and I'm getting so blessed to do interviews like this with you. And so I'm just really taking that in. I want to be in the moment with my mom because I feel like she's so excited that this book is happening and that she's so happy, that she's happy for me, that she's happy for us, that me being able to honor her and our beautiful friendship and my wonderful family. It's not even just my mom, it's my family. Being able to honor that unconventional upbringing and the love and the acceptance and the freedom has really meant a lot to me. And I want to be in the moment. And we live in such a multitasking, multi-device kind of world. And it really matters to stop and be in the moment of things and think, if I could dream something up and actually have it happen, what would it be? Well, 9 months ago, I would have said, oh my gosh, I would love to write a memoir about my mom and me and have it like come out on her birthday and have it be well received. And it's happening. Like that would have been my wish. And now it's really happening. So how could I not just be in the moment of that wish coming true instead of trying to find every other thing to distract me from it? No way. I want to be in it and I want to be in it with her and I want to feel the connection with her as we're both delighting in it. So that's my biggest thing. But I'm also working on some client projects. One in particular that I'm just starting. I don't know if I should talk about it or not, but anyway, it's a book development that's it's about advancing racial equity with a really remarkable woman I've worked with before, and she's kind of the pioneer right now in this work, and she's just such a heart space, brilliant woman, and I'm so excited that I get to be the partner on bringing the book to life. So that is super cool for me. But other than that, right now, I do have aspirations of being a novelist, and I do have novels in my head, and I do expect that to happen. I think my mom's going to help me make that happen. So eventually there will be more books for sure. And I'd love to write the book about how Dana's and my relationship happen, because it's incredibly magical too. So we'll see. We'll see. I just feel really just filled with gratitude for everything that's happening, for being able to share space and time with someone like you. Such a gift. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you and to talk about my remarkable mom and my childhood and some of these mystical things that mean a lot to me. And we don't always have the space to talk about them. So thank you for giving that to everybody you invite on your show. It's a really, really special thing that you're doing, allowing people to talk about those things that we can't always see, but they mean so much more than what we can see.
Well, thank you for your beautiful words. No, I'm so honored that I am able to connect with you, and man, I can't wait to see what comes out of this. I know that you and Bree, the story doesn't end here. There's so much more to come, and yeah, the world is just June 14th, 2021. You're going to be able to see the newish birth of Bree and Stacey. No, I think that's such a beautiful full circle moment right there.
Yeah. Oh, thank
Wow.
you. It does feel like that, I will tell you. It does feel like, in a way, it wasn't that long ago that I was a little spirit who said, oh, I need to swoop in and be her daughter this time around. And we're going to have fun, and we're going to have this special bond. And I'm going to be her mom sometimes, and she's going to be mine, and we're going to be the best of friends. And now, we have come full circle. Now she's on the other side, and I've been able to create something tangible to remember her and honor her, which, is a lovely thing to be able to do. And then, like I said, to be able to be in this space with people like you to actually talk about it is so wonderful. I can't thank you enough for who you are and what you're bringing to the world, and allowing people like me to come and share.
Oh, thank you, Stacey. Well, I will share on the bottom notes where people can find your book, where they can connect with you. I know that you're active on Twitter, so people can connect with you on there. Thank you so much again for joining us. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I will see you guys next week for a new episode of The Journey Within. Have a magical rest of your week, guys. Bye.